It was a quiet morning when I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching Karen, or as she preferred to be called, Madam Vice President of the Neighborhood Improvement Council, in her leopard print robe and Ugg boots. She was shrieking about her Tesla being possessed by Satan because the dashboard had lit up like a Vegas casino. I couldn't help but wonder if now was the moment I should finally tell her the truth. After all, she'd been mooching off my electricity for weeks, and I figured it was time to give her a little extra something to chew on. No, this wasn't a movie. This was real life. This was what happened when a Karen-backed HOA pretending to be a militia tangled with the wrong neighbor. Freeze frame. Yep, that's me. The guy who owned the private well that Karen illegally tapped into to water her garden. What did I do? Simple. I flushed her system with sewage. And believe me, that was just the beginning. Now, before you start thinking I'm some kind of mad scientist turned suburban vigilante, let me explain. I moved into this neighborhood for peace and quiet. 1-acre lot, modern house, reasonable HOA rules. It all seemed perfect on paper. I'm an electrical engineer, not the type to stir up neighborhood drama, but as I quickly found out, all it takes is one power-hungry Karen in an HOA vest with a fake badge to turn your life into a sitcom. Karen, whose real name was Candace, had taken an immediate interest in me, but not in a good way. On the very first day, she left a typed letter on my front door, yes, typed, not even handwritten, criticizing the temporary construction tools I had left out. She claimed they were a visual nuisance and threatened to fine me if I didn't store them properly. Keep in mind, I'd been there less than 6 hours and hadn't even finished unloading my truck. At first, I shrugged it off. I thought some people just need control, like plants need sunlight, but I didn't realize just how far she was willing to go. She wasn't just annoying. She was strategic, passive-aggressive, and meticulous, like a cruise missile locked on target. One day, she flagged my mailbox for being the wrong height despite it matching 3 others on the block. Another time, she cited me for leaving my trash cans out, even though I had just wheeled them back in from the curb. But the last straw wasn't any of that. No, it came when my power bill shot up by over $180 in a single month. I checked everything. No lights left on, no devices running. But then I noticed something strange on my Ring camera footage. At 11:47 p.m., I saw a white Tesla backing into my driveway with a cable trailing from my outlet. Out stepped Karen in full ninja mode, bathrobe billowing and phone light guiding her way. I watched the video 3 times just to be sure. There she was, that smug little tuck of hair behind her ear, strutting back to her house like she'd done this 100 times before. And she wasn't even trying to hide it. The next night, the same thing. Then again the night after that. Sometimes it even happened during the day. One afternoon, she had the audacity to park diagonally across my driveway, stretching the charging cord visibly. No apology, no heads up, just full entitlement. Naturally, I did what any tech-savvy, petty revenge enthusiast would do. I installed a power monitor with Wi-Fi logging. Over 2 weeks, her Tesla siphoned nearly 70 kilowatt hours of electricity from my outlet. That came out to about $174 worth of electricity. When I finally confronted her, calmly mind you, she blinked at me like I had just asked her to donate a kidney. "Oh, I thought that was a shared community outlet," she said. "It's in the front yard, after all." I pointed out that it was clearly attached to my house, wired into my panel, and locked behind a weather-sealed cover. She froze. "Well, you don't even drive an EV, so what are you using it for?" she asked, with a look that was almost more accusatory than confused. I told her to stop. I zip-tied the cover shut. 2 days later, she cut the tie. I changed the lock. The next day, the outlet box had a scratch on it, and the lock looked tampered with. She was getting bold. Even worse, she filed a complaint with the HOA, accusing me of tampering with neighborhood utilities. Imagine my surprise when I got a warning letter and a $200 fine for obstructing a shared electrical resource. Ha! I laughed. Then I stopped laughing. I spent the next 2 days reading through the HOA charter like it was a religious text. Turns out, There's a vague clause about exterior elements visible from the road being subject to HOA easement interpretation, vague enough that Karen could use it to claim my front outlet was now a communal access point. It was at that moment, that exact moment, when I realized I wasn't just dealing with an annoying neighbor. I was up against a small town dictator with a penchant for free electricity and no regard for boundaries. That's when I started planning my revenge. But I didn't want to just cut off her power. That would be too easy, too quick. I wanted her to learn to feel the consequences of tapping into someone else's life without asking. So I went to work. I found an old irrigation controller box, one of those green fake ones people use to hide sprinkler systems. I rigged it to look like a boring electrical setup. Inside, I installed a custom-built low-voltage shock relay circuit. Non-lethal, of course, but enough to make her Tesla freak out. The plan wasn't to hurt her, it was to scare her, to make her understand the consequences of her entitled actions. I camouflaged the setup perfectly, synchronized it with my motion camera, and waited. When the moment arrived, it was better than I had imagined. As always, Karen backed her car into my driveway, plugged in the cord, and walked away, completely unaware. After 5 minutes, the show began. First, the headlights blinked twice. Then the dashboard lit up red. The touchscreen flickered like an old VHS tape. The speaker started emitting a chaotic ding, 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 as if the car was losing its mind. Karen came running out, panic-stricken, ripping the cord out of the outlet like it was on fire. That's when she started screaming on my porch about demonic possession, accusing me of installing some sort of voodoo tech to sabotage her car. I just stood there, sipping my coffee, nodding like I had no idea what was going on. But that wasn't the best part. Oh, no. While Karen was losing her mind over her Tesla's meltdown, I activated the irrigation system she had accidentally connected to my private well, and that's when the real fun began. In 32 seconds, sewage was pumped directly into her decorative garden planters. You thought this story reached its peak with the Tesla light show? Trust me, that was just the beginning. Here's something I've learned the hard way. When you catch a Karen red-handed and she still doubles down, it's not because she's brave. It's because she's delusional enough to believe that the entire neighborhood will always have her back. And when the HOA is basically her personal army, you can't just fight back with logic. You need finesse, evidence, and most importantly, you need to hit her where she thinks she's invincible. Her image. After the Tesla incident, Karen went into full damage control mode, but not the way you'd expect. She didn't apologize, didn't offer to pay for the power, didn't even seem embarrassed. Instead, she leaned into the crazy, claiming that her car had been sabotaged by neighborhood radicals. The next morning, she marched around the cul-de-sac with a clipboard, warning everyone about a techno-anarchist in the community who was targeting electric vehicles. Apparently, I had gone from simple homeowner to eco-terrorist overnight. Meanwhile, Karen filed an official complaint with the HOA accusing me of endangering her property, interfering with her right to clean energy, and spiritually compromising the flow of communal goodwill. I didn't even know what that meant, and I don't think she did either. As expected, the HOA responded by sending me a strongly worded letter threatening legal action if I tampered with community infrastructure again. Not a word about her stealing my electricity or the bogus fine they had already slapped on me. Just another passive-aggressive reminder that Karen was always right. So I did what engineers do best. I gathered data. I installed a new smart power monitor, more advanced than the last. Real-time tracking, alerts, and power usage estimates down to the second. I set up motion-streamed cameras, feeding directly to my phone and cloud server. I even created an applet to notify me whenever the outlet was accessed. Despite the Tesla incident, Karen came back. Not immediately, but a few days later, she parked her car quietly just after midnight and plugged in. This time, I was ready. The outlet wasn't rigged with electricity anymore, but the trap was set. Over the next 10 days, Karen charged her car 9 more times. Same pattern, late at night, always parked at an angle. But it didn't matter. I had her on camera from 3 different angles. Every angle had perfect resolution. So when the next HOA meeting came around and Karen stood up with righteous indignation, accusing me of being a neighborhood threat, I stayed quiet, let her rant, let her froth at the mouth about how her car had been attacked, let her wave her Tesla diagnostics printout showing voltage surges. And then I spoke, pulled out a remote and clicked the projector on. Slide 1, footage of Karen backing into my driveway with the date and timestamp. Slide 2, a power usage chart showing the exact moment her car was plugged in with a peak labeled Tesla charging spike. Slide 3, 9 more clips, one after another. That, my friends, was how you win a neighborhood war. As I stood before the HOA board, a dramatic soundtrack played in my mind. The moment had come. Every slide I presented, each more incriminating than the last, had Karen's face front and center. It wasn't just a simple presentation. I had prepared for this moment with flair, adding some dramatic music because, well, why not go big or go home? You could feel the air get thick with tension. Karen's smile froze, and the HOA president's jaw dropped slightly. Even the treasurer, who usually hid behind his coffee cup, nearly choked. But this was just the beginning. I passed around printed statements showing the total power usage from Karen's mini Tesla charging sessions, over 74 kilowatt hours, enough to power a small hot tub for an entire month. The bill added up to $187.24. I'd even broken it down item by item just to make sure the message hit home. Then came the killer blow. I presented a statement from my insurance company stating that any unauthorized use of my utilities could result in voiding my coverage. Karen, of course, tried to interrupt. I held up one finger, signaling for her to wait. And then, with all eyes on me, I revealed the cherry on top, the provisional patent I had filed for my Tesla theft detection and deterrent device. I explained how it was fully registered under my name and had even been reviewed by an online electrical safety forum who hailed it as an effective yet harmless deterrent. Karen attempted to claim I had created a weapon, but I quickly corrected her. I pointed out that my device was no more dangerous than the static shock you get from a doorknob, and that she had used my outlet over a dozen times without permission before it ever activated. The best part? Tesla's own diagnostic report showed that the car was never damaged, just mildly confused. For 10 full seconds, the room sat in stunned silence. Then, an older board member, Barry, who was usually only there for the donuts, looked over at me, nodded, and muttered, "Well, hell, that's just brilliant." And then Karen lost it. She melted down right there, screaming that I was a sociopath, accusing me of stalking her and demanding that I be removed from the neighborhood. From the back of the room, someone called out, "Lady, you've been robbing his house at night. Maybe you shouldn't talk about stalking." A few people chuckled, and even the HOA president tried and failed not to smile. In the end, the vote was clear. Karen was stripped of her vice president title. The board issued a formal apology, removing the fines they had previously slapped on me from my record. They even agreed to revise the HOA charter to explicitly state that private utility outlets were not communal resources, but the property of the homeowner. The real kicker, though, was the restitution. Karen was ordered to reimburse me for all the stolen electricity. She had 30 days to pay up, or the HOA would fine her double and place a lien on her property. When they said the word lien, you could practically see the life leave her body. She stormed out of the meeting, leopard print purse flapping behind her like a flag of defeat. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Losing her title, being publicly humiliated, and having to pay for the electricity she'd stolen should have been enough to make Karen rethink her choices. But no. Just a week later, a new, mysterious complaint arrived in my mailbox. An anonymous letter accused me of harboring illegal technology and creating instability in neighborhood energy fields. I almost laughed so hard I thought I'd break something. And that wasn't all. My security system caught her trying to sneak around my yard in the dead of night. This time, she wasn't in a car, but armed with a garden hose. And something about the situation told me she wasn't just there to water the roses. There's a specific sound a garden hose makes when it's dragged across gravel in the middle of the night. It's not loud, but it's definitely off. And when you've already caught a neighbor stealing power from your house and seen them melt down over their haunted Tesla, that sound becomes a huge red flag. I was half asleep on the couch, reruns of some old TV show playing in the background when my outdoor motion alert went off. I checked the camera feed, and sure enough, there she was, tiptoeing across my yard in fuzzy slippers and a windbreaker, dragging a hose like she was auditioning for a failed Ocean's 11 spinoff. At first, I was confused. What was she up to now? Was she trying to sabotage something? Or maybe she thought I'd short circuit myself by watering my outlet in some bizarre form of revenge? She crouched by my irrigation box, the same one where I'd earlier sent her a little sewage surprise into her stolen water line, and began fiddling with it. That's when it clicked. She was trying to reverse sabotage me. But unlike me, Karen had no clue what she was doing. She was about to learn a hard lesson. You see, after the Tesla incident and the HOA meeting, I had upgraded everything. A new lock, a hidden camera inside the irrigation box, motion sensors embedded in the ground. I knew retaliation was coming. I mean, you don't publicly dethrone the queen of HOA chaos and not expect some pushback. But even I didn't expect her to be this bold or this hilariously incompetent. I watched her yank on the hose, try to connect it to my system, fail miserably, and then attempt to twist a cap that wasn't even a real valve. The cap was purely decorative, while the real components were sealed inside a weatherproof case under a false panel. Karen, in her infinite wisdom, thought she was accessing my water line again. I sat back amused as I watched her frustration mount. She finally stood up, took her flashlight, and started smacking the box like it owed her money. That's when I hit the button. The sprinkler system turned on, blasting her square in the face with a stream of water. You've never seen a middle-aged woman jump so high in your life. She slipped on the wet gravel, fell flat on her back, and the hose wrapped around her like a defeated python. She scrambled up, drenched, her hair standing out like she'd licked a battery, and bolted back to her side of the yard without even looking back. I didn't even need to get up from the couch. It was perfect. The next morning, I got an official letter from the HOA requesting my attendance at an emergency community conduct review. Translation: Karen had pulled the fire alarm again. When I showed up to the clubhouse, I half expected another circus. Karen was already there, looking like she was preparing for a congressional testimony. Dramatic scarf, oversized sunglasses, tissue in hand. She claimed that I had attacked her with malicious sprinklers while she was conducting a routine community inspection. She accused me of rigging a water ambush and weaponizing landscaping tools. It was like watching someone try to sue gravity for making them fall. The board, though, wasn't having it this time. The footage I provided was clear. Karen was trespassing, tampering with my irrigation box, and trying to access my private property in the middle of the night. No flashlight or clipboard could make that look like a community inspection. She looked like she was casing the joint. But Karen didn't give up. She pulled out a bunch of printed screenshots from a neighborhood Facebook group where people were gossiping about the Tesla incident. She claimed I was running a targeted harassment campaign and that her car had developed electromagnetic anxiety from the whole thing. Yes, that's the term she used. Then she went all in. She brought out a stack of papers to prove I was a threat to community safety. Tesla diagnostics, pseudoscientific articles about electromagnetic frequencies, and of course, a petition she had started titled "Remove the Hacker from Oak Valley Estates." The petition had 4 signatures: hers, her dog groomers, and 2 people who thought they were signing up for a composting workshop. I didn't even have to defend myself. The HOA board, burned by their last mistake, had already made up their minds. The president leaned forward and asked, "Do you have anything to add?" I simply pressed play on my security footage, showing Karen getting blasted by my sprinklers. There was a beat of silence. Then someone in the back started laughing. A snort turned into a chuckle, and soon the whole room was in muffled fits of laughter. Even Barry, the donut guy, chimed in with, "That's karma with a pressure nozzle." Karen was furious. She stood up, yelled something about bias and corruption, and stormed out again. The HOA issued an official censure, not to me, but to her. They warned that any future trespassing or false reports would result in legal action. And that should have been it, right? I had won. I'd survived the HOA witch hunt, dethroned the suburban dictator, and turned my yard into a petty revenge fortress. But Karen, as it turns out, wasn't wired like a normal human being. Instead of laying low, she went behind the scenes. She started whisper campaigns, fake social media posts, and passive-aggressive flyers at the community mailbox, suggesting someone was using electrical trickery to control neighborhood behavior. And then, one day, a man in a suit knocked on my door. He said he was from Tesla's customer integrity department. Apparently, Karen had filed a formal complaint claiming my outlet had permanently damaged her car. She said it gave her phantom glitches and that the soul of the car felt different, even playing music it didn't recognize. She was looking for compensation and a new car. I invited him in, made him coffee, and walked him through the entire saga. Every video, every power log, every schematic. At the end, the guy shook his head, saying, "We've dealt with a lot of things, but this is something else." He thanked me and left. 3 days later, Tesla flagged Karen's car for electrical inconsistency, marking her profile for restricted support. And she didn't even know it yet. The next weekend was the neighborhood block party. Karen showed up with her Tesla front and center like a show dog. That's when someone asked why her center console now flickered when she used Bluetooth. Her face froze. She muttered something about rogue frequencies. Another neighbor jokingly said, "Maybe it's haunted again." And just like that, Karen had become the punchline of the neighborhood. It all started with someone pulling out their phone and casually saying, "Hey, didn't this guy catch her stealing power?" They were talking about me. And Karen turned slowly. She saw me, leaning against my fence, sipping sweet tea, smiling like I was watching the twist ending of a movie I'd seen 100 times. That was the moment she realized the tide had completely turned. Not just because of the board or the evidence, but because the whole neighborhood had begun to wake up. And Karen, she's running out of places to hide. There's a curious thing about people like Karen. They live under the assumption that no one will ever push back, that they can lie, manipulate, cheat, and bully their way through life without consequences. Everyone else is too polite or too busy to call them out. But once that illusion shatters and people start seeing the real person behind the performance, it doesn't take long for the whole facade to collapse. Karen's facade was crumbling, and it was happening fast. After the block party, things shifted. The neighbors who had once smiled and nodded at her now avoided eye contact. The HOA board, once her allies, started quietly pushing her out of committee meetings. Even her beloved Tesla, once a symbol of her smug suburban dominance, became the subject of neighborhood gossip. Apparently, the flickering console hadn't stopped. The random Bluetooth malfunctions were getting worse. Karen took the car to a different service center hoping for a fix, but Tesla's flag on her account followed her. Everywhere she went, she was met with the same polite but condescending response. "We'll look into it." Translation, "Lady, we know who you are." But Karen wasn't going to go down quietly. Oh no. If her reign was coming to an end, she was going to make as much noise as possible on the way out. That's when the flyers started appearing. Handwritten rants about electrical sabotage and neighborhood conspiracies were taped to mailboxes and slipped under doors. One flyer even suggested I was using electromagnetic pulses to manipulate HOA decisions. She couldn't even spell electric correctly. Another claimed I had built a mind control tower in my garage. I don't even have a tower. I have a Wi-Fi extender. Then she began trying to sell her house. It started subtly with a feeler post in a local community group asking for a good real estate agent. Then a for sale by owner sign appeared in her yard briefly before vanishing after a weekend. I figured she had finally realized the neighborhood was turning against her, but what I didn't expect was that her house wouldn't sell. Not because of the market. Oh no! It didn't sell because of me. Not directly, of course. I didn't post anything or say a word to any potential buyers, but somehow footage of her stealing electricity from my house had made its way onto the internet. A compilation video, no less. Edited, captioned, scored with dramatic music. The title? Karen's Free Ride: How One Woman Stole Electricity and Blamed Demons. To this day, I have no idea who posted it, but it went viral. It blew up in the local Facebook mom groups, got reposted on Reddit, and even ended up on a petty revenge YouTube channel with 500,000 views. By the time a real estate agent tried listing her house officially, the listing was getting bombarded with troll comments. One person asked if the outlet came included in the sale. Another wanted to know if the car was pre-haunted. Zillow had to temporarily disable the comment section. At one point, Karen tried to shift the narrative. She told people she was moving for a career opportunity and that the neighborhood had become toxic. No one bought it. Every open house she hosted had ridiculously low turnout. A few people came not to buy, but to see the infamous yard. One even recognized the front porch from the freeze frame in the viral video. After that, Karen stopped hosting open houses altogether. Meanwhile, life on my side of the fence was thriving. My smart home project was nearing completion. The solar panels had been installed and were running smoothly. The best part? I had set up a password-protected outlet system tied into my smart grid. Anyone in the neighborhood could charge their devices or even plug in an electric car if they asked politely and had the password. I called it Power to the Polite. It became a hit. Even the HOA admitted it was a forward-thinking community initiative and asked if I would consult on a plan to implement it across the neighborhood. Karen was not invited to that meeting. You might think this is where it ends. That Karen packed up, slunk away in shame, and life returned to normal. But if you've been following this saga, you know better. Karen doesn't do normal. She doesn't do shame. One last twist was still coming. The neighborhood's annual holiday decorating contest was coming up. A huge deal. Lights, inflatables, synchronized music, the works. Karen had won it 2 years in a row, mostly through intimidation and guilt-tripping the judges. But this year, I decided to enter, just for fun. I went minimalistic, white LEDs, sleek patterns, solar-powered, of course. A clean aesthetic with a subtle message. In my front yard, I placed one final touch, a simple lawn sign, backlit with soft light. It read, "This house is powered by the sun, not the neighbors." It became the unofficial slogan of the block. Kids took pictures with it, neighbors shared it online, someone even made t-shirts. I didn't win the contest, but Karen didn't win either. She came in fourth, behind me, behind the guy with the inflatable Santa who did backflips, and behind a high school kid who wrapped his entire house in tinfoil and wrote budget bling and duct tape on it. That was the final straw. A week later, a moving truck appeared in front of Karen's house. No announcement, no goodbyes. By sunrise, she was gone. Her Tesla was loaded onto a trailer. She didn't even drive it. I stood on my porch, sipping my morning coffee, watching it all unfold with quiet satisfaction. Not because she was leaving, but because she had finally run out of ways to twist the narrative. No more lies, no more flyers, no more haunted dashboards. A few weeks later, her house finally sold. The new owners were a retired couple from Colorado. Lovely folks. The husband's first question to me, "So, is that outlet thing real?" I laughed and told him the whole story. He shook his head and said, "Well, that's one way to welcome us to the neighborhood." Then he added, "Mind if I get the password for your charging setup?" I smiled and handed him a little card with the code. Now, when I walk through the neighborhood, people wave. They ask for tech advice. One guy even called me the HOA whisperer. I'm not sure that's a compliment, but I'll take it. What started as a petty conflict over stolen electricity turned into something bigger, a shift in how the neighborhood functioned. It was a reminder that even in the most mundane settings, standing up to a bully matters. As for Karen, last I heard, she was trying to sue Tesla for emotional damage. Something about her new car randomly switching radio stations. Personally, I hope it plays the same 3 songs over and over, preferably something ironic like High Voltage by AC/D. And as for me, I'm finally getting that peace and quiet I moved here for. No more fines, no more sabotage, just the hum of solar panels, the occasional motion sensor ping, and the sweet, sweet knowledge that if anyone tries to use my outlet without asking, well, let's just say I've still got the circuit and it's ready to party.